I think the Eurovision Song Contest has always been a big platform for the queer community.
Hello, my name is Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, the podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories that they created there, and the people that they used to know. So this week we are going to do something a little bit different. But before I tell you about what we're discussing, I want to tell you about something else that will help to set the scene. But also, I'm aware that a lot of people who are listening to this are going to know what I'm talking about. So I don't want you to think that I think that you're an idiot. And I'm sorry if it comes across as patronizing. But, okay, the thing I need to tell you about is the Eurovision Song Contest. Now, for those who don't know, this is an annual international song competition that happens in May and brings competitors from across Europe together. Well, mostly Europe. For some reason, Australia and Israel and some other countries that are not in Europe are also involved. But let's not focus on that because that is just going to distract us for a night of glitz, glamour, and sometimes questionable voting. And yeah, okay, technically Eurovision is not a queer event, but if you have ever been lucky enough to have watched one or several or every single one since the year you were born, then you will know that it is pretty bloody queer. And to celebrate the 2023 competition, I sat down with Rob Holley, the head of content for the Eurovision Song Contest. Only we are not talking about the contest itself. We are talking about Eurovision Again, which was an online watch party of past competitions that Rob set up during those grim early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. And he did this after hearing that 2020's competition had been cancelled in order to just bring a little bit of light to people's lives because it was so miserable then. Do you remember? And I know that that is a little bit different to our usual show because it's focusing on an online space rather than a physical space. But what struck me most during this conversation is how many similarities there are between Eurovision Again and queer bars. Oh, I know that sounds really dumb, but there's especially this sense of community and belonging that I think both bring. And that's pretty damn special. We talk all about those early days of lockdown, which honestly, I kind of had blocked most of out of my brain. So there's lots of me going, oh yeah. What it was like for Rob to watch the meteoric success of his little baby project and how Eurovision Again led to Rob snagging his dream job with the European Broadcasting Union, or as we like to call it around here, the EBU. Okay, so Eurovision and the gays, always associated with one another, always assumed that if you like Eurovision, you're gay, always assumed if you're gay, you like Eurovision. Why do you think that is?
I think the Eurovision Song Contest has always been a big platform for the queer community. And I just think that when growing up, I wasn't particularly into sports. I wasn't particularly into competition or getting involved in them because, you do PE and you feel a bit threatened. I actually remember being really good at rugby when I was a kid and my PE teacher putting me in the bottom group with all of the girls, which is no disrespect to the girls that were in that group, but it was the bottom tier of ability. And I'd been going to rugby club for months by that point. I knew what I was doing. And it was homophobia on his part. Mr. Neville, if you're listening to this podcast.
Mr. Neville. How do you
Mr.
spell it?
Neville.
Is there an E on the end?
No, there's a T on the end of the way that I'd spell it.
Wait, what? No.
I don't know.
Anyway, he sucks.
Anyway, so he sucked. And, you know, I just remember that throughout my whole life. And, you know, I didn't want to get involved in sports and anything. But with things like the Eurovision Song Contest, what I do remember is that it was objectively competitive, but you didn't need any specialist equipment. You just needed your own talent. So you didn't need to join a football team. You didn't need to go and buy a bobsleigh or something, but you would be able to represent your country and people would award you points for what you were doing and who you are regardless. So that's when you got all of the great when you think back to, like, I think it was 98 or 97, it might have been 98, we had Paul Oscar. I think it was the first openly gay man, and he was very openly gay in that performance when you watch it with his leather pants and stuff. You had Dana International, the first openly trans person winning the Eurovision Song Contest. So I think as a sort of platform, it like transcends anything like football or the Olympics, because, I mean, even the Olympics, you didn't really get out athletes until quite recently. So there was nothing on there to inspire you. You didn't see yourself reflected. And it's that old adage of, like, you can't be what you can't see. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's so true. And I think Eurovision had such a wealth of different sort of minority groupings on there all the time, in sort of like a fun, competitive, celebratory environment, that it just appealed to queer people. And I think that for me is why it's sort of like will always be a really inclusive space, and, you know, it just always has been. And I think it's becoming even more inclusive, I've got to say that. And what I really like about the contest now is that it is it's a queer space in sort of a very literal way, in that I think anybody that wants to be in that space is very open-minded, and that just invites more people into it. So there's a plethora of different types of people that sort of get involved with Eurovision communities, and it's just very open and inclusive, because it's always been this sort of platform for anybody. Not only is it a platform for them to take part, but it's a platform for them to succeed and to thrive and to be seen as winners and champions. And that's something that I don't think you would have got in many other televised competitions. Certainly not the Olympics or football. Maybe figure skating. I don't know.
Oh yeah, gymnastics maybe.
What? You don't sound convinced.
No, I don't know. Like, is that the reason? I might need to sit with this for a while and think about it, but I don't know if it is the inclusivity that people latch onto, or if it's just the fabulosity.
But that's it. If you're being, like, unashamedly fabulous, yeah, they absolutely are the same thing. It's like when people rave about Super Bowl performances or whatever, or, you know, they've seen something that's spectacular and inclusive, and you think, well, it's not the same as like a display of machoism or a display of, you know, scoring the winning goal in the FA Cup final. It's about showing the best side of someone on an international platform and saying, well, I can go and do that, or, you know, it's okay to go and wear, you know, what that person is wearing, or to sing a song about same-sex love, or to go on stage as an openly trans woman wearing a Jean-Paul Gaultier, like, feather, whatever that was that she was wearing, I can't remember. And that's what you've got to remember, is that, and I think particularly now, when you've got this whole toxicity around LGBTQ people, gay people, drag shows, trans people, is when you think back to something like Birmingham 1998, and you can go back and watch that old show, and there's, you know, the odd...
For anyone who doesn't know what he's talking about, it's when Dana International won in 1998.
Yes, when Dana International won in 1998. But you just think, well, that was a real moment. And to have, like, a trans person seen as a winner on a international TV show shown at prime time on a Saturday night that would have at that point, I think, got, you know, 300 million viewers or whatever it was, that not only sort of like shows inclusivity, but it introduces different concepts and different minorities and different ways of living to a broader audience. And they may not take that on board completely or whatever, but it certainly introduces them to these different things. And I just think if you're in a minority, or you're in a sort of a grouping of people that isn't often showcased or shown in a celebratory way like that, it's very intoxicating. And I certainly do you not think back to performances, not just in Eurovision, but when you're a kid, of when you see, like, gay stuff on TV or people being who they are and just thinking, they're great. I love them.
Yeah, but I think, okay, so I've had a little bit more time to think about this. And I think that, yes, I can see where you're coming from, but I think there's also something for me particularly, and maybe not for everyone, but there's something about shoddiness or wonkiness that really resonates with me in performances and in like events and things like that. And maybe I need to spend more time because of the way that your face just pulled the thing there. Maybe I need to spend more time explaining wonkiness or shoddiness.
How dare you refer to the
No.
Eurovision?
I'm not talking about it like it's a bad thing, but like I think for me as a child, the things I could latch onto and the things that I could see myself in were the things where there was less polish, where it was a bit crap, where it was a bit camp.
Yeah, but that's yeah, I completely get that, and I think that's an absolutely valid thing, and I think that's also part of the reason why people love, or certainly loved, the earlier Eurovisions, or those Eurovisions back from then, is because it's seeing sort of behind the scenes, it's people succeeding even though it doesn't always go right. And that's the fun thing about television, that, you know, if something went wrong, that was better than something going right, because there was no, you know, it just made for entertaining television. So I do think, going back to the Eurovision Song Contest in those sort of like the 90s and the early noughties, it was fun to see the sort of the operation, and it's sometimes not getting it quite right. And perhaps that doesn't happen so much nowadays when everything is so much slicker.
Yeah.
And it really is sort of like I genuinely believe, and it's not just because I work on it, but like it's genuinely the slickest, biggest operation on television. And there are so few things that can do what the Eurovision Song Contest does to that extent. But it is exciting when you see things, you know, going wrong. And, you know.
It's not necessarily like things going catastrophically wrong, but it's just those little moments that make people human.
And you think that is a reason why it appeals to queer people, because of those sort of human moments? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, I get
Yeah,
that.
there's this shiny, glittery thing, but then there's this teetering on absolute failure. So shall we cast our mind back to the dark days of the pandemic?
Oh, God, yeah.
What was happening in your life March of 2020 when it was like, oh, sorry, got to stay home and not leave the house, and we'll tell you when you can come out again soon, promise?
So I'd actually got almost trapped in Lithuania because of Eurovision. I'd gone to Finland to watch their national final, and they had a artist in it called Erika Vikman, who I thought was going to win that national final, with a song called Cicciolina, which is about a Italian porn star turned politician.
Nothing screams Eurovision winner more than a song.
It was a great song. It's a really good bop. Anyway, so I went there with my pal Ellie, and we were there, and I was sort of writing again for an article that I was doing for The Independent, and it flopped, sadly. It didn't win. So I was like, oh no, that's one of my stories gone for this year. I'd finished in Finland and the UMK final, and I wanted to go and visit Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. So I was doing a quick tour of those countries. And by the time I got to Lithuania, they'd called a lockdown, and there was one flight left to leave the capital, and I had to get on that flight. And then I came back, and everything was a bit miserable. They cancelled Eurovision, and it was just a bit dark.
So how quickly into the pandemic did they cancel Eurovision? Was it immediately?
No, I think they were trying to figure out whether or not they could do it with the videotapes they had, or if there was a way of doing it remotely. And I just, by that point, the timing was so appalling. I think some big events were able to sort of move their contests until the following year or whatever, like, you know, the football or whatever. But with Eurovision, they would have been at a point where they were building the stage in the Rotterdam Ahoy, and there was no alternative. You couldn't just do a different version of it.
Push it back.
Yeah, so they had to cancel it completely. And it was nice. They did programming around it. Like, there was a show called Europe Shine a Light, which was a bit bleak, because it was, you know, lots of people at home and not, you know, celebrating Eurovision. But there were some nice performances and stuff. But it was a bit like, oh, well, this is the first big event that has been cancelled. And I think when you sort of look forward to something like that, in the same way that, you have football fans that look forward to big derbies or the FA Cup final or a Champions League final, because they've invested so much time and love into their team that when suddenly the chance is taken away from them, it's like, oh, well, we'll never know now who would have won that. We'll never know what's going on. So it was quite late in the day that Eurovision got cancelled. And then I think we went into a proper lockdown, if my memory serves me right, in the UK.
But so what was that like then? So coming back, flying back, not really knowing what was happening. Like, I mean, obviously knowing that there were these lockdowns and that you had to stay in your house, but not knowing how long that was going to last for. What headspace were you in?
So, I remember my friend Jazz, who lives over the other side of the courtyard. She came over, gave me some things from her freezer and said, Rob, I'm not going to be needing these. If you want like this cottage pie or whatever, you have it. And I'm going back to my parents in Hertfordshire. And she's yet to come back. She's had such a nice time with her mum. Wow. This is the other thing about lockdown is I think for some of us who were maybe like transitioning into a different phase of their life, like I was going from my late 30s, going out, clubbing, drinking a lot, to I think I probably naturally would have just become a bit more of a homebody anyway during that time, is that suddenly your priorities change and, you're doing different things. So, and I think she's found, happiness in doing that. But for me at the time, I wanted to stay in London. I couldn't think of anything more stressful than living with my mum and dad in Oxfordshire. But the nice thing about where I live is we've got a courtyard. And one of the things that you could do under the rules was gather at one point with like people as long as there was a certain amount of space.
Had to be in your bubble.
Yeah. So we would go out in the courtyard and I'd see my other neighbours. There's a gay couple called Richard and Uri. There's a lesbian couple. And then there's lots and lots of parents. And it was nice, gathering with them for the first few weeks and drinking, but then you were sort of like craving a bit of queer company because there's only so many stories about toddlers in lockdown that you can deal with. So it became quite difficult quite quickly, I think, especially as I lived on my own and so it was very difficult, wasn't it? And I think at that point as well you could only go out once a day and that was it. Once a day for an hour, I think.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, there was lots of walking around.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But so early on in this lockdown, you decided to try something.
Yes. So...
and I hope we're talking about the same thing right now.
That's for a different episode. I think so. By that point, I'd been a DJ at the Royal Vauxhall Tavern doing a night called Push the Button for about, I think it was 10 or 11 years at that point. So that had completely gone. That source of income, but also that community and those friends around me, you lost them in a finger snap. They were just gone. And I wasn't doing as much as I could have been doing in my day job because it's very difficult. And I wasn't DJing, so I wasn't getting my sort of nightlife LGBTQ plus fix either, which led me to getting bored and deciding to do a Twitter sync watch of the Eurovision Song Contest.
So do you remember then when the idea came to you?
Yeah, I think so. Like I've always enjoyed like just doing stuff. So the reason that I DJ'd is because I just wanted to do a club night that wasn't there. And I was like, well, I'm going to go and play some songs and make some quizzes and do some badges and whatnot. And if people come, that's really, really good. And I'll just go ahead and do it. And it was a similar thing with this, is that the Eurovision community has always, for years and years and years, done rewatches. And I just thought, well, I'm going to have a go at doing that. And so I tweeted at some point in March of 2020, does anybody fancy watching an old episode of the Eurovision Song Contest in sync at Saturday night at 8 p.m. or whatever? And then a few people said, yeah, I'll do that. That would be really, really cool. And then I set up a little private DM group on Twitter when Twitter used to work. And we were like, well, let's do this. And it sort of, we did it on the first Saturday. And I love creating stuff. I'm a massively frustrated writer. So I went ahead and I picked the contest that we were going to watch. I think it was it 2013 2013 Malmo, I think, was the first one. And so in that week, when I wasn't really doing my full-time job because everyone's headspace was all over the place, I was writing sort of like one-liners and facts about it, and I was taking screen grabs so that as everyone pressed play on the YouTube episode of that show, I was syncing up all these facts and tweets at the same time, and people were interacting with them on Twitter, throwing in their own thing and using the hashtag Eurovision again. And it quickly became its own little community.
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt you quickly. First of all, what was the thought process behind choosing the 2013 contest?
I'm going to have to check that it was the 2013. Let me... There's a Wikipedia article about Eurovision again now, which I'm extremely proud about.
Oh, what? So you didn't just write that yourself?
No, thank you. I didn't. Yes, it's the 2013 one. There we go. It was the 21st of March, 2020. Wow, this is really detailed. Someone's gone and put like all the winners of the voting and the
I don't know who it could have been. It definitely wasn't me.
No, it was. I don't have access or time to do Wikipedia editing, but it's nice that it's on there. We did have a little website that I did with information on it, but I didn't do that Wikipedia page. But I chose the 2013 one because it's a good one to start with, and people love it. It's the year after Loreen won. Emily de Forest was a good winner. And the Swedes always put on a really good contest, whenever they win. I can't think of a duff Swedish contest. So it was really important to start with a fun one. And, if it worked, I thought, well, I'd do another one the next week. And it just exploded.
Okay. And so then my follow-up question, how much time did you put into preparing for the tweets that you were tweeting? And also I'm a bit upset that you didn't just do it off the cuff.
Too much time. And I did do a lot off the cuff, but what I wanted to do was to make sure that each song had at least 3 tweets, but also that it had a screen grab to go with it, that had the lower third when the song came up with the name of the artist and the title, and and I wanted to use the hashtag.
So
I wanted it to feel
this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But this is me. Anything to do with stats or flags or anything that's sort of a bit dweeby and nerdy, I think you have to throw your whole enthusiasm into it. Otherwise it's never going to work. And I think that's why it did as well as it did. I could have done a half-assed, flippant comments in the style of Terry Wogan and as it was being on with no images or whatever. But it wouldn't have been inclusive and people wouldn't have got on board with it. And I think that's why it worked in that first week and why it had legs and carried on.
So how long then? You didn't put a number on it. How many hours did you spend preparing?
A long time. I mean, you had to remember, the shows are about 4.5 hours. So I had to rewatch the entire thing. I had to write, so it was basically like re-scripting a Eurovision Song Contest. So probably a good couple of days.
Wow.
But bear in mind that this was the time when anyone that had a 9-to-5 job, office culture was falling apart because people were worried about their relatives. They couldn't do half of the things that they wanted to do. And so you were sort of stuck at home with very little to do. And you needed a sort of a hobby or a creative outlet to sort of focus on. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to focus on rewriting the Eurovision Song Contest from 2013. That's what I'm going to do. And that's exactly what I did.
Yes, we all respond to stress in different ways.
Yeah.
Well, and so earlier on you said that you are just the type of person that will put something on and do something and then see how it goes. And straight away my brain was like, oh, what? So you're not riddled with anxiety and paranoia about it all failing and then getting crippled with that anxiety and then just not going ahead with it? No. So are you just the type of person that's like, yeah, this will be great, let's go?
Yeah, because... So I don't know. I don't know if that's a specific personality trait or whatever, but anything that I sort of when you turn your hands to things that you're sort of interested or passionate in and you give it 100%, it doesn't always work out. But if you're enjoying yourself, people I think pick up on that and they go along with it too. So with the Push the Button, the club night, we'd done 2 clubs before that which flopped really hard. We did one called Hello Hooray. And then before that, we did a night called Windy Pops. And neither of those things, like, they didn't work out, but like we kept doing them because we enjoyed them. And then I think if you're really passionate about something, then people pick up on that and they go along with you because they want to be a part of it. And so I'm never worried about things flopping. I think, I have many cherished flops in my life.
That's such a wonderful attitude to have. So you're not like, oh, well, no one came last time. What's the point? I'm putting myself out there and no one cares.
No, why would I?
Because you're a human being.
Yeah, but like, you're mostly doing these things to like amuse yourself, right? I mean, you want to bring your friends on board and to have a good time, but like at the end of the day, if like a club night flops or something, it's, there'll be another one along and you can go and do that. And I don't know. Do you have like a creative outlet that you just, throw yourself into and you don't care what other people think? Oh, are you worried about failure?
I think the voices are too loud. And I'm always having to like make sure that I'm consciously pushing those voices out. So I'm never like, this is going to be amazing and I can't see anything going wrong with this. I'm always like, well,
yeah,
this is going to happen. And then what if this happens? And then, So yeah, I just really admire that quality.
Well, I do have those worries, but my worries are basically about doing the best that I can and, making sure that everyone's having a fun time. And that's what I worry about. But if the end result is, no one wants to do it, you can't force people to have fun. I'm not... like Monica.
I don't know about that. I think you could. I mean, if you had a big enough budget. But anyway, the reason I'm asking this is because I wanted to better understand what you were thinking in the lead up to this first event. But it sounds like maybe you were too busy screen capping old videos.
I wasn't thinking. I did. Do you know what? Actually, that first one, because it was just something that I was doing. And then this is the other point that I would say is probably like intrinsic to my personality and my nature and how I do things, is that I then roped in loads of friends to do stuff. So the following week...
It was a 20-person show.
Well, no, there were several people involved. Like the second week, my friend Ellie, she came along and did some voting sort of apparatus on it. So the following week that we could actually vote on a new winner of the Eurovision Song Contest. So we added more complexity and said, right, now you're going to be able to vote on this show. Get your votes in, your 12 points, 10 points, 8 points, and then down to 1 point. And then we'd crown a new winner. And Ellie would do that. My friend James came in and started doing a few video graphics for us. So it looked a bit better than it had done in the first one. And then we had other people. My friend Mark came in and did like PDF scorecards so that people at home could print them off. And people saying, I've got this idea. And it's like, yeah, let's go ahead with that and let's do it. And that is, you bring people on board who are also enthusiastic and then things snowball. And then it was, I think, that second week that the EBU got in touch with me as well. And I was like, oh no, they're going to tell me to cease and desist.
Okay, well, I want to find out about this. But before that, let's stick on the first night. So it's all happened. Mm-hmm. You've been tweeting out all evening, probably not been able to enjoy yourself because you've been refreshing your feed and trying to make sure that you're keeping up with the new songs that come up. But what was the feeling after it had been a success and after people had gotten involved and taken part?
It was great because it was like a community that had come together to enjoy something together, and everyone just really enjoys the song contest and the singing and the sort of being together without actually being in the same room with one another. I was also very, very drunk by the end of it, so that was nice. But it was sort of replicating that sense of community that, I would have got by going and DJing in a club or going out with friends or something. And so everyone was there on their phones and their laptops, and we were all chatting about it or WhatsApping or voice messaging. And it just felt really good. And it felt that you could be connected to people without actually being in the same room. And I think as well at that point where there was a lot of worry and nervousness about what was going to happen. And, I still think maybe we haven't processed this, as a collective population as we need to, but people were literally dying and us not knowing why or how we could prevent it or what we could do. So it was a real respite from that. and just being able to sort of socialise with people, albeit online.
And did you go into that first night with a set of expectations like, oh, it'll be great if this many people come and take part, or it'll be great if this happens? Or were you just like, let's just see?
No, no expectations at all. We just wanted to do it. I thought maybe like 20 or 30 people would tweet along and we'd have fun on Twitter with it, and that would be it. And then, you know, a few people would maybe jump on board. But after that first one, I think there was close to 10,000 tweets about it.
Wow.
Which, again, when Twitter used to work properly with like trending in that, to see the topic go up to like, I think it was number 2 or 3 at that point, and then it sort of petered out after the show. But people were jumping on board because they saw the hashtag and they were like, what is this? But there was no expectation that it should, you know, there were no targets. I didn't care if, you know, I was doing it to amuse me and my friends. That was the most important thing, and to have a bit of a laugh with it. And people just really got on board with it.
But so as well as being drunk at the end of the evening, you were mind blown, or were you just like, yeah, take it in my stride?
I mean, you got the adrenaline from it because, I mean, this is a big problem with social media, and also one of the great things about social media is you'll post something and you get endorphins from someone saying something nice to you or liking a tweet or whatever. So when you're in a situation where you're completely locked down and you're suddenly getting thousands of people liking what you're doing or coming together as a community, it is a bit of a high, especially when you mix Pickpole de Pinay in with that. It's a buzz that you get from doing it. And everyone was feeling that buzz because everyone was getting connected to this show that they could all watch at the same time. Yeah. And they all had a fondness for. And I think at that point as well, there was no TV that was particularly exciting because you couldn't, because like, I again, try and think back about what you had in those first few weeks. People couldn't make TV. They'd stopped EastEnders at some point. You know, you couldn't have live shows with spectacular
But just so I'm clear, exciting TV and EastEnders, you're saying that EastEnders is exciting TV?
It's the best show on TV, yeah. What?
Okay.
Do you not like EastEnders?
Cool. No follow-up questions here, thank you.
No, do you watch EastEnders?
No.
You need to get into EastEnders. It's so good. I think it reflects like East London as it is now a lot better than it used to. They've got a gay bar. They've got the Queen Vic and they've got the Albert, which is a gay bar.
It's not the Prince Albert.
Yes, it's the Prince Albert.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I'm on board now.
Yeah, you have to. It's really, really good. There's some good LGBTQ storylines going on at the moment.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway.
But yeah.
So then the EBU got in touch and you were like, oh, shit, they're going to cease and desist me.
Yeah, so cease and desist me. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I think it came through on like an email came through on the Monday. And I saw in the inbox, it was from a guy called Dave Goodman, who is now my boss. And it said, this is from the EBU or whatever. And shall I find the email and read it to you?
Oh, yeah.
Let me Google it. Hold on. It's in my inbox. Have you not
framed it?
No, I haven't thought about a lot of this stuff for a long, long time now. Here we go. The email from Dave Goodman. It says, "Hi, Rob. Hope you're okay despite the current circumstances. Just wanted to get in touch about Eurovision again. I enjoyed watching 2006 on Saturday. So I think this was the second week.
Okay.
So he must have got in touch on the third week. And following the comments on Twitter. We all think it's a great initiative and would love to work with you on it in the coming weeks to get more fans involved." And then he just goes on about, we've got the rights to the full shows between 2004, 2009. They're currently not on our YouTube channel, and we think we can get some of those up in the coming weeks. While we look at that, could we possibly collaborate on this Saturday show? So they wanted to get on board with it. And it was really good because by that point, we had a voting system.
You had your PDFs.
We had PDFs. Everything was ready to go. But the thing that the EBU could give us access to was shows that hadn't been online, or shows that were online in a good quality. And also they could use something called Premiere on YouTube. Mm-hmm. So part of the fun of Eurovision again was that we wouldn't tell people the year that we were going to do until 15 minutes before it started. So we had to go and find a good copy on YouTube that had the full show, had decent, either no commentary or English commentary, or commentary that wasn't chattering all over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what the EBU could do was pick a show, put it on YouTube, put it as a sort of a mystery thumbnail, and then everyone could stream at the same time. So no matter what time you started, it would be at the same point as everyone else watching. And that's when it just went nuts, I think. Like, by that third week when we started showing the shows, it was, you know, the number one trending thing on a Saturday night. It was trending, you know, above things like Britain's Got Talent. It just became really big. And I think you had something like 10 or 12,000 people watching the YouTube channel at the same time. So it was pretty big at that point.
But okay, so that's all the practicalities. Let's put that to one side. What did it feel like opening that email?
Great, because I was nervous about a cease and desist, and I thought, oh God, you know, it's the EBU. Are they going to tell me that they want to, you know, take this off me or do something? But they didn't, and they're, you know, that's not in the EBU's nature to sort of clamp down on things. They're a union of broadcasters, so they're by nature very collaborative, and they've got loads of creative people working there. So it was really fun, and it was another reason for me to sort of like throw myself deeper into this project and not do any of my 9-to-5 job. Which I was, I should say, I was doing my 9-to-5 job at the same time. But again, it was still really
they're not
difficult.
listening, don't worry.
It was really important. It's just like, you know, that it was still really difficult to do that sort of, that office-based thing. So I thought, well, this is something to carry on with.
But so are you telling me that in the subsequent weeks, you found ways to spend even more time preparing for the presentations?
Yep.
So at its peak, how many hours were you spending preparing?
Oh, I say I was, you know, taking time off my day job. I wasn't really. Time was a bit amorphous. So I was spending time in the evening writing these scripts and doing the screen grabs and whatever. I was pretty much working on it like a full-time job in the evening. But But there was nothing to do, like literally nothing to do in those lockdown days. So by the time you'd like phoned your family and friends, you'd gone for your state-sanctioned one walk around Burgess Park. There was nothing to do. So in the evenings, I just threw myself into Eurovision again. And it was great. There was I had no other responsibilities, so I could do that.
And so you said before about Eurovision fans being a particular kind of fan, very passionate and very invested. Ooh, see how I'm making this sound neutral? And obviously, Twitter is a certain space where people feel free to share their opinions quite openly. So where I'm getting at is, were there any negative responses from Eurovision fans? Or just randos on the
probably,
internet?
but I don't know.
Oh, okay. That's nice.
But the thing is, by the point that, you know, everything was in its was full steam. So, you know, by the time we got to week 4, and it was getting like 16,000 to 20,000 tweets or whatever, any negative stuff was just buried by an avalanche of really nice stuff.
See, this again is where we're not alike at all. Because I'd be like zoning right in on the one negative comment and then like making it ruin my entire week.
No, you can't do that.
I know you can't do that, but I would do that.
But you know what? Like, the thing is, and I just think about like the internet. I mean, it's a millennial thing, isn't it? We grew up pre-internet, and we were there at the beginning of the internet. And, you know, I think about myself when I was in my teens and my 20s, and I was probably an arsehole online as well. I completely get that. It coincides with being a certain age and not knowing enough people, and also not thinking about how you're perceived by other people. So when young people say stuff online that you're just like, what? That's really mean. Why would you say that? I'm like, well, you know, I would have said that before. And so I'm not too bothered about it.
But why are you assuming they're young people that are being mean to you?
Because it mostly is young people, right?
Is it?
When you look online and you see like stuff that's like just really dismissive and horrible, it's usually young people, right? You can tell by what they look like and by what they say, and you know, you also get the sort of angry Facebook mums who are of a different generation. But like mostly on Twitter, I think the horrible stuff is just young people or anonymous profiles. And it's like, well, you just have to sort of ignore that.
But might I just see your teenagers and raise you insecure middle-aged gay men?
Oh, yeah, but what can you do about them? Like, but it's insecure middle-aged gay men. Well, yeah, but again, like, you've got to remember, at this point, there were so many tweets, and you would have like a tweet coming in from Cascada or Las Ketchup, that would be the highlight, and you'd be like, "But this is amazing." So I didn't really care what like Debbie Downer 38 from Cheam is thinking about this. I mean, like, that's always going to have that negativity. And I think the thing is as well, and this is why, for me, again, it's all about community building and bringing people with you, is that if you bring people on board, some people do feel, when they see people having fun and they don't know how to involve themselves in that fun, they can get a bit shirty, or they can feel sort of like isolated from that. But you see that in all walks of life. You see that in clubs. You see that when I go and walk my dog. I mean, dog walkers are the worst for gossiping and for, not being included with things. But it's just a microcosm on Twitter. And you see people who are like, just get involved and have fun with it, and don't be so, mean. Just sort of, I mean, how do you, like, why should I get annoyed by it?
Let's draw the line under this. This isn't a me problem. This isn't a you problem. It's fantastic that this was just water off a duck's back.
Well, no. And also, like, you do remember people who are really properly mean, who know you in like real life, and that's a different thing. And that kind of thing you do sort of remember, don't you? I can see you smiling. And you think, you know what? I'm going to put that to the back of my mind, and the next time that you want to do something fun with me, I will bring that up. And then we'll talk about it, and then we'll move on.
So I learned something in the last year about when you get defensive when someone's mean to you or when someone criticizes you. And it resonated with me. And it's that when you agree with what that person is saying about you. So if someone is criticizing the way I talk or the way I walk, I'll only get offended if I think, oh yeah, they're right, I talk shit. Or, all right, I talk fine. But if you're fine with like the way you look and the way you talk and the way you walk, then it's not going to bother you, right?
I guess. But then also, I think part of it is sometimes I'm just, oh God, this is turning into, Psych 101, like the...
Welcome to the show.
The couch or whatever. But like, I do think another sort of trait of mine is sometimes I'm just, and this is probably a negative trait, but I can be quite oblivious to people's
that's wonderful
perceptions of me. And like, it's only after a situation where I go back and think, oh, I've really upset that person, or I said something out of turn, and I don't mean to. And I think it's just I'm quite quite
that's
blunt.
Not so wonderful.
Well, no, but it's like I do then go and analyse it and think, oh, I can rectify that next time I speak to them. And I'm really sorry if I was, spoke out of turn or I said this, because it doesn't come from a place of malice or anything. Mm-hmm. So it can be a really good thing for when you're trying to get something through, or you're trying to be creative, or you're trying to deliver on something that you think is going to be fun. Like,
not get distracted.
Yeah, don't get distracted, don't get dispirited. And then afterwards, when you do a bit of self-analysis, you can go, oh, I didn't mean to upset that person, and maybe I should talk to them about it or whatever. And I think that's so being sort of oblivious in those situations can be quite a good thing from a being productive point of view, but also can then hamper you afterwards.
Fuck it, you can sort it out afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
See, my problem is my CPU is just taken up by like scanning the room, making sure this is happening, making sure that I've not pissed this person off, making sure that this person's responding in the right way to this. And then you just don't have enough energy left for the thing that you're there to actually do.
Yeah. And I think as you get older, you become less worried about that kind of stuff. I mean, I remember going out in my 20s or whatever and just worrying about what people would think about me, about, how I looked, how I was perceived or whatever. And I do think, again, for you and I especially, we're from that sort of weird millennial category whereby we're
geriatric millennials.
I prefer the term heritage gays, but I do think we're from this sort of slightly off-kilter generation whereby, like, I look at my niece, for example, who is, I think she's now 19 or 20, but she was talking to me about, like, fancying someone in her class when she was in her teens, and I would never have done that as, like, a 13, 14-year-old boy growing up in Oxfordshire or anything. Mm-hmm. do you know, it's that level of confidence that they've got now because, you know, the doors have opened. And I think people who are our age, we're in that weird cusp, which was just after Section 28, just before the explosion of social media. So we've got this level of sort of confidence and resilience, but at the same time, we don't have that level of confidence and resilience because we're in a completely different mindset of people. We were, you know, we were
in a different way.
Yeah, we were going out and clubbing and doing different things, but like we never had the same level of positive reinforcement that the kids do nowadays. So I think it's I think it's fascinating. I'm rambling now, aren't I? But it's true.
But it is interesting. But all of the points that you're making are kind of redundant because we're talking about the fact that you and I have very different approaches to this.
Yeah, we do. But I don't think there's one great approach to anything. It's what works for you, right? You know?
What works. Overanalyzing, being crippled by fear. Yeah, absolutely, it's working for me so far.
But if someone is being a dickhead online, you can choose to take it personally or you can ignore it.
Yeah. And you know, I'm painting myself as this fragile flower, which I'm not. But there is always that like niggling in the back of my mind when I am receiving that kind of criticism. And it's not something that like stops me from doing things for weeks and weeks and I like lie in bed and feel sorry for myself, but it's like somewhere here in the back of my brain just reminding me.
But do you kind of react to it in the moment, or is it something that gets you sort of like when you're, you know, just going to bed and falling asleep and you're like suddenly bolt up and you think, oh God, they said this about me, is there anything I can do about that? Because that's, I think, the difference that we've got here is that I tend to store it and then it comes up at the, you know, the quiet moments rather than reacting in the moment to it. Because people are just always going to say mean things or nice things and you can choose, you know, which you give the priority to.
Choose. Yeah, I need to do more thought work and being intentional about my thoughts. Because if anyone's ever nice to me, I'm like, oh, yeah, whatevs. Yeah, whatevs. They don't mean that. And then when someone's mean to me, I'm like, oh, well, then looks like I'm going to have to find a whole new personality.
It's too much effort.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, get over it. So we're not here to talk about my foibles. What are we here to talk about? Oh, yeah. So the pandemic carried on for a good amount of time. And then slowly and surely rules started to be flouted and there was a relaxing of this stay-at-home mandate. But Eurovision again carried on until about 2021. About 21. Well, according to the Wikipedia page, till the 20th of November 2021. What made you decide to stop?
I wanted to see my friends again. I think, like we were talking earlier about the sheer amount of hours that I put into this, and it was a lot. And it got to the point where things were opening up again. You had the summer. So there was a finite amount of things that you could do with other people. And you still couldn't go clubbing. I still couldn't DJ, couldn't go partying. So you had to sort of take every opportunity to see people in real life that you could. And that meant that, you know, there just wasn't as much time to be able to do something like Eurovision again. And also like being around my people was important, particularly from a mental health perspective. There's only so long that you can sort of, as I was saying, those endorphins you get from doing a really fun project, they can't sustain you forever. You have to go out and touch the grass and, you know, see some butterflies. I actually remember the first time I saw a butterfly that summer and it landed on me. I nearly cried because I was like, oh my God, the touch of another creature. And so it went from doing Eurovision again on a weekly basis to being on a monthly basis. And then finally winding up the following year when lockdowns had completely finished and, you know, everyone was back out and about again because there's no time to do that. To that extent. And also I began working for the EBU. So my job, my passion became my job. And like, there's so many other things that I can do and so many ways that we can use that content now to
And get paid for it.
and get paid for it and enhance the enjoyment of our content for the community.
Enhance
I think
enjoyment.
it's,
Get paid. But so let's talk about that then. So I mean, one of the questions I usually ask is, how did the space change your life? And it sounds like it changed your life in quite significant ways.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I feel very lucky. I was at a point whereby, so I'd been doing celebrity management for about 8 years by that point, and I felt I'd done everything that I could do. I'd done it for the Terence Higgins Trust, so I got to work with some really cool people. Did it for Prostate Cancer UK, so I got to work with I learned about cricket and football and all these ex-footballers, and that was a challenge for me, but I really enjoyed it. But I was getting to the point where I wanted to do something a bit more creative. I am at heart a frustrated writer and producer. So now I get to, it's like winning the Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. You get to go in and you get to do all of this cool stuff, but legitimately and within the EBU. And I feel really lucky because the EBU is full of creative people that love the Eurovision Song Contest. So I feel I'm constantly learning and being creative and doing stuff. And so it has completely changed the way that I work, my job. I'm really lucky that the EBU offered me this role afterwards. And
so how did that all go? Like, were they just like, here, have a job?
Sort of ish. So how I ended up working at the EBU is so it got to a point where the lockdowns weren't happening anymore. Eurovision again was coming to an end, but I'd written a fuck ton of copy. I mean, like the amount of stuff I'd written.
I picked up on that. Yeah.
So I think they were looking to improve the copy on their website, Eurovision.tv at that time, and they were like, "Oh, we know someone who can write about Eurovision in a fun and engaging way," and they basically approached me, and I interviewed for the role of head of content, and I've been the head of content for the Eurovision Song Contest for, I think, 2 years now. And yeah, it's basically doing what I did with Eurovision again, but across so many different platforms and formats and events. And I really, really, really love it. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. This is a bit of a weird question for me to ask, given that all of these things only happened a few years ago. But this is kind of how I usually finish the episode, so let's just go with me on it, all right?
Okay.
I want you to imagine that you have an opportunity to go back in time and talk to the Rob of 2020, who is locked up in his apartment, start of the pandemic, start of lockdown, doesn't really know what's going on. If you had a chance to give him some advice, what would you say?
The impossible advice would be to go back even earlier and to do something like that sooner. That's probably what I'd say to myself. I don't know that I could give myself any advice.
So your advice wouldn't be spend double the amount of time preparing?
No, because there weren't enough hours in the day to double that time. Do you know what? I'd probably tell myself, again, is I just was oblivious to what this might lead to. Even when I was being interviewed by the New York Times, and I had Netflix asked to sponsor some of the posts and stuff, so they paid a little bit of money for that. But I would just be maybe a bit more canny and a bit more switched on to what this could lead to and the opportunities. And I've been lucky that it has led to those opportunities. But again, I'd maybe be a bit less oblivious about how, what I was up to and the chances that I could take and the opportunities. But it all worked out well in the end, didn't it?
Yeah, pretty damn well. Yeah. But I just want to pick up on one of the things you said about you would go back even further.
Yeah.
And convince yourself to do something like this beforehand. Why did you say that?
I think as you get older, you sort of realise that there aren't things stopping you from doing stuff. Like if you want to have a go at, doing a podcast, or you want to create some video content, or you want to do a massive...
Start an OnlyFans.
Watch along for... I'm not starting it. I can't do an OnlyFans.
You just told me. There's nothing stopping you.
You can get that content for free on Scruff. I don't know why people would pay for it. But that's the only thing I would say that, I've always been quite good at just having a go at things, but not really planning things. And I think sometimes, if you think you can do something, then go and do it and work out the details later, because it's always worked out. And that's the only advice I'd give myself, is that it always, everything comes out in the rinse, doesn't it? You can always do something. You just need to throw yourself into it. So I just encourage myself more, which would probably make me even more unbearable.
Do you have any memories of Eurovision again, or any other online queer events that brought you joy during the pandemic? Well, if you do, why not get in touch? I want to create the biggest online record of people's memories and stories of queer clubbing and going out and connecting, but I need your help. Go to lostspacespodcast.com and find this section, Share a Lost Space, to tell me all about what it is you got up to. And if you'd rather, you can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, where my handle is Lost Spaces Pod. Find out more about Rob by following him on Twitter at Rob Holley, or if you want to find out more about Eurovision again and you love long Wikipedia articles, why not go to that fancy Wikipedia page that we talked about during this conversation? I will make sure the link is in the show notes for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate if you subscribed, left a review on your podcast platform, or just told other people who you think might be interested in giving it a little listen too. My name is Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.